taking several exams along the way if you
Of
want to
course.
get philosophical.
Okay. And so as you sit here today in 2023, in order to become board certified, you would still need to pass that first test.
Yes. I felt very uncomfortable in Dayton prior to this. I will be honest with you, because of my sexual orientation, I felt very discriminated against. I was already on very thin ice in Dayton, and I didn't want to make any more waves. And that's one of the reasons why I went ahead and signed something that I don't agree to.
Okay. Well, we'll get to that. I'm just interested in kind of getting a little bit more of your background. And so, based on the passage of time and missing some deadlines, you ended up in Montgomery County in order to kind of complete some training that you'd already
Yeah, I
completed.
needed 1 year of training to be eligible to sit for the boards. Is that established? Do we understand that as a jury? Okay, I think we've got it. Let's go on.
You're asking me to move along?
Yes, please.
Okay.
I know. I'd like to get out of here. I have to do Halloween with my children in Central Indiana.
And listen, I think everybody's probably sensitive to that, okay?
Okay, let's. Thank you.
But it is an important task that you have here today, isn't it?
It is. It is. And I'm very emotionally distraught. So let's just do it. And I'm trying to be calm, please.
Okay, all right. So, with respect to the structure, okay, you
Yes.
indicated that you're essentially a student back in 2019, right?
A trainee.
Trainees have supervisors and or teachers, correct?
Yes.
In the context of the Montgomery County Coroner's Office, when you're performing or conducting an autopsy as a trainee, who is the supervisor or the teacher?
Whoever's on rotation that week. So the week that September 19th occurred, it would have been Dr. Lehman. So any exams I did that week, he would be my supervisor.
When you look at the opinion page that was the subject of your testimony, at least some of it earlier today, you are listed as Amanda Paul, MD, right?
Yes.
He is listed as Lee Lehman. What are his titles?
It looks like he has a PhD and an MD.
Okay. And he also has a title below that, correct?
Oh, he's a chief deputy coroner. So he would be under Dr. Harshbarger, who would be the chief coroner, or the elected coroner, I suppose.
Okay. And then below him, like his number one, like a first assistant, would be the chief deputy?
I don't know the entire organizational flow chart, and I'm not going to testify to that.
How many other chief deputies were you aware of there at the time?
I'm not sure who has that title.
Okay. Except for Dr. Lehman does.
Yeah, by looking at this, I know that. I would not have been able to recall that prior to having that pointed out to me.
Okay. So, if I understand generally back then, you are in the autopsy room. You indicated you've done somewhere around 10 autopsies or so by the time you
No,
conducted?
I was asked if I had performed more than 10 at that
Yeah.
point, and I said yes.
Okay.
But at that point in my career, I'd probably performed over 1,000.
So you were asked about 10.
He asked how many I had performed at Montgomery County.
Okay.
I said, I don't know. He said, do you think it was more than 10? And I said, yes, it was definitely more than 10.
Okay. And each time that you conducted or performed one of those autopsies in Montgomery County, it followed the same protocol, correct?
Yes.
And can you describe that protocol? Not the actual hands-on, the examination, but who's in the room typically? How does the supervisory component
Okay,
work?
so I get the case assignment. I go into the morgue. Usually they're at Montgomery County. They have 2 or 3 assistants, and there is a supervising physician that comes in. Now, like I said, at this point in my career, I've done over 1,000 autopsies, so my supervision wasn't as hawk-like in the beginning as if I was a newbie coming into it.
So in some ways, you would kind of build up some credibility or chops with respect to performing the autopsies based on all the ones you've done in the past, right?
Yeah, I would say I was potentially their most qualified fellow that they've ever had.
Okay. And so you mentioned there's some assistant type persons in the room. Are they helping you in performing or conducting the autopsy? They're referenced, don't they?
Yeah, I have under attendance, there was a photographer there who takes photos. Then we had autopsy assistants, James Johnson, Cody Miller, and Michelle Welch.
Now, This document appears to be prepared using a type of application. It's called Dragon Dictation Software. Do you know what that is?
Yes, it's just dictation software.
Okay, and so is it you dictating?
Yes.
All right, and so how does that, so you are dictating in real time as you are conducting your examination, correct?
Not at all.
Tell us how it works.
I do my examination and I have notes or papers, and then I take those papers into my office, and then I can post that on my computer once I'm sitting down at my desk. It's not like on TV when you see it, when they just start dictating in the air. That's just TV.
Okay. All right, and so ultimately, this document is the end result of you looking at your notes and reviewing everything that you did in the autopsy and then making your findings, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So you had an opportunity to take a look at what I think is labeled as what, State's Exhibit number 3? Did you look at it?
Sorry.
State's Exhibit 1. Is it a fair and accurate depiction of your report that you created back in September through November of 2019?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and that's true of each and every page?
I'm sorry, taking it back. It says it's a true and exact copy of the original. I have no reason to doubt that. I can't recall if every word on every page is the same.
All right. Well, I would like to kind of go through some of the report with you and talk about some of your findings, okay? So, you indicated, and it's clear from the report, that you completed or performed this autopsy on September 30th, 2019, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you indicated a number of assistants that were present in the room. You also indicate that present in the room was Richland County Coroner's Office Investigator Bob Ball.
Yes.
And there was also a police detective that you know being at the autopsy as well.
Yes.
Detective Ryan Radoshik from the Richland County Sheriff's Department.
Yes.
We've come to understand that there was a special agent for BCI, Rodriguez, that was also in the room for part of the exam. Do you recall that?
I do not recall that at all.
Okay. Are you saying he was not there, or you just can't recall?
I definitely can't recall. I am definitely not saying he was not there. The only reason I would have any idea that these people are here is because they are documented in the report. There's a sign-in sheet that people sign. So this person who we're referencing apparently did not sign in, because otherwise they would have been included in the report.
Okay. With respect to the initial external exam, we learned that he was 28 years old at the time of his passing, correct? It's on page 2 there, right at the top.
Okay, yes.
You described him as a white male identified as Alexander Rios, correct?
Correct.
External examination, customary to weigh the deceased.
Yes.
He weighed 194 pounds and was 70 inches in length, is that correct?
That's how it's documented, yes.
And that would be 70 inches, what is that, 5'10"?
Yes.
You described him as being well-developed and well-nourished.
Yes.
You don't always make that documentation. Sometimes you see indications of malnourished and other sorts of things, and if you saw that, you would document it there, right?
That is correct.
By all accounts, this is a relatively fit-seeming individual.
Yes.
Okay. Next, during the external examination, you make some findings regarding what appear to be the eyes to me. Directing your attention to paragraph 2 in the external examination.
Yes.
You indicate that the sclera and the conjunctivae are unremarkable. Can you tell the jury what that means?
The sclera are the white of your eyes, and the conjunctiva is the pink part on the inside of the lid when you flip it up, flip it down.
You go on to indicate that the eyes are free of petechiae.
Yeah, petechiae are a non-specific finding that happen when capillaries burst.
Okay, and Mr. Rios did not have petechiae.
He did not.
Petechiae are relevant in an autopsy. Under what circumstances?
They're a non-specific finding that we just document if it's there or not. It can be seen in cases of asphyxia, often related to compression of neck vessels.
Okay. the kind of thing that was being described in the video by Mr. Thompson when he was questioning you, correct?
Well, I guess we are gonna go into different kinds of asphyxia. There is, mechanical asphyxia, where
Yes.
the chest can't compress.
Sure.
And then there's also, manual or ligature strangulation, or such as hanging. And so the petechiae form in the eyes when you compress. It takes less effort to compress a vein that returns blood to the heart than it does to compress an artery. So if you apply some force to the neck vessels, it's minimal, like 6 pounds. You can include the jugular. And the head weighs about 10 pounds. So it's a myth that you have to be suspended. You can just have weight like this and be able to asphyxiate yourself. But anyway, the arterial blood is allowed to flow. The venous blood cannot return, and then the capillaries burst. So that's a different type of asphyxia, because it's a closed loop system.
Okay. But to be sure, evidence of petechiae, generally speaking, can be evidence of asphyxiation, yes?
Not at all. It's a very non-specific finding that's seen in several other types of things. It does not indicate asphyxia at all. It's seen in asphyxia, but it doesn't indicate asphyxia.
So when you say indicate, you mean what?
It doesn't prove it. There's no proof of asphyxia.
Not one way or the other, but
Right.
it's relevant to the determination.
It's relevant, correct.
Sure.
It's something we note. We
Okay.
just note what's there.
Okay.
Like I said, I look for everything.
Right. And in this case, you saw no petechiae, and the eyes were otherwise unremarkable, correct?
Correct.
You also did an examination of the mouth. It appears you made a finding that the tongue appears normal.
Yes.
And in order to take a look at the tongue, you would have had to look around in there, right?
Yes.
And you noted nothing of consequence with respect to anything as to
Right.
why he died, right?
Right.
Okay. With respect to evidence of injury on page 3, I'd like to draw attention to that.
Okay.
This is obviously a very important section, typically in an autopsy, correct?
Yes.
Tell us why.
Well, like I said, we look for everything. If there is significant injury, then that's something that is significant. If there's no injury, then it's important to note that too, just to document that there's no injury.
If someone suffers a gunshot wound and you believe that's the cause of death,
Then
evidence of injury, you'd have all sorts of description about the gunshot wound itself, right?
that's correct.
And it would appear in this section.
That's correct.
Path of the bullet, damage it did along the way to all the different organs, right?
Yes,
Objection,
but-
relevance.
Yeah, this does, I was just about to say it doesn't have a
Hold on.
gunshot wound.
No, there's an objection.
It's just for the purpose of helping them
Yeah,
understand.
overruled at this point but I get that we can't go too far afield.
For sure. So getting right to it, with your examination of Mr. Barrios, the evidence of injury that you noted was a .25 or quarter-inch abrasion on the right side of his lower lip, right?
Yes.
You also identified a half-inch linear abrasion on his left flank. What is the
Yes.
left flank?
That's the side of the body.
Okay. And you, for the record, are motioning down here just above your hip, I think.
Yeah,
right?
kind
On
of
the left
between
side.
the rib cage and the hip.
Okay. And the abrasion was a half-inch dried abrasion, so about like this guy here.
Yeah.
Okay. And then a quarter-inch dried abrasion on the dorsum of his right foot.
Right.
Okay. So that we understand, your definition of an abrasion is what?
Abrasion is what lay people would call a scrape. I would call what you guys would probably call a cut. I would call a laceration, and a bruise would be a contusion.
Right. Okay. Talk about having kids. Kids out running around outside, takes a fall, comes in with a little scrape on the knee.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yep.
abrasion, right?
Yeah.
Okay. None of these injuries that you identified, and those are the 3 that you identified, correct?
I think I have 4. I have one on the lip, one on the flank, one on the knee,
One on
and
the
one
knee.
on the foot.
You did, 4. Quarter
But
inch,
none of those are fatal.
Right.
They're just little scrapes, tiny scrapes.
but it goes to show that you're thorough and you're looking for everything.
Yep.
You examined the respiratory system.
Yes.
You weighed the lungs.
Yes.
You weighed one lung at 1,050 grams and 885 grams respectively, yes?
Yes.
Ultimately, in your opinion page, page 1, you talk about pulmonary edema with a combined lung weight of 1,935 grams. Tell us about that.
Pulmonary edema is another non-specific finding. It's just heavy fluid, a lot of extra fluid on the lungs. And like I said, it's non-specific. We can see it in cardiac deaths, we can see it in overdose deaths. A lot of times we see it on people who have been on the vent, like this guy. He was hospitalized 7 days.
Okay, so the three things you mentioned are cardiac deaths, overdose deaths, and...
Yeah, and those are just a few examples. I'm not gonna give an exhaustive list.
It's fine. You examined his neck, correct?
Yes.
And you indicated that there were no abnormalities, right?
That's correct.
Specifically, you indicate that the hyoid bone was intact and that the larynx were intact, correct?
Yes.
All right. Not uncommon in compression or strangulation cases, pressure on the neck, that you could have damage to those structures, correct?
In cases of manual strangulation, it can happen. The hyoid bone is right up here, and so it can get broken with force right up to that area.
And
And
that
the
could,
larynx is here, and so pressure to the anterior neck can cause hemorrhage in that area as well.
both of those can almost certainly be fatal, yes?
If the force is there long enough.
Sure. You also examined the strap muscles of the neck.
Yes.
Where are those?
The strap muscles, like for instance, this is the sternocleidomastoid. You can see mine pops out.
I
really
can't,
well.
even from here.
And then there's a couple other layers underneath there too.
Okay. And you examined those as well?
Yes.
No abnormalities?
No.
All right. Now, ultimately, after completing the examination, you went to the work. I would assume just looking at it, September 30th, 2019 is the date of the autopsy. You started and finished it on that day, correct?
Was it 30th? I thought we were saying the 18th.
I don't think it was
I'm not
the
even
18th.
sure.
You're fine. Go look. Take a look.
Oh, and no, it was the 19th. I don't know where I got 18th. I'm sorry, 30th. I'm looking at 2019.
Okay.
September 30th, 2019.
And then it's November 22nd when you ultimately signed your opinion, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And it was during that time that you were putting together all of your notes?
Yes, between those and in addition to my other cases and my normal
You know-
life that I left.
In other words, the passage of time there between completing the autopsy and the finalizing of the report is just a function of your schedule and other cases and things of that nature, correct?
Right, we wait for, histology to come back. Because I was a trainee, I did look at tissue under every case, just stuck under the microscope just as a checklist for the ACG&E.
Okay. And you also have to wait for like toxicology to come back to you.
Generally,
Okay.
but toxicology was not done on this decedent, if I recall, because he was hospitalized for 7 days and we didn't have the admission flag. But in general, yes, we do wait for toxicology.
Do you have at the back end of the report the toxicology?
Oh, I guess I do.
I think it's a 2-page laboratory
Is it
report.
just?
I think it confirms hospital
Oh.
medications. And
Oh
things like
shoot, we did do it. See, I'm not used to this format. I don't like how they do. I do a different format. I don't know why that's not in the front page. Anyway, yeah. Let's see. Presumptive ID of levetiracetam, which is an anti-epileptic drug or seizure medication. Let's see, what does it say? Which type of blood was taken? Okay, so it looks like we have heart blood and peripheral blood. So we were testing the blood from the man he'd already been in the hospital like 7 weeks. So he's gotten IV fluids, all sorts of stuff. Lorazepam, midazolam, those are benzodiazepines. Those also have anti-seizure properties and help calm you down. Fentanyl, that's a pain medication. I'm sure you guys have heard of fentanyl. It's a pain medication that is prescribed to people and can be used appropriately.
Carefully, right?
Can be. And then lacosamide, which I'm not 100% sure what that one is off the top of my head. Not one that kills you.
I think we're all in agreement that those appear to be medications that were administered during
Yes,
the
those were
7 days
medications that he
ago.
was given apparently during, I don't even know why we tested it. That was
So now, getting back to your actual opinion. So if you could refer to page 1 there of State's Exhibit number 1. Okay. So you have indicated that you talked about, you asked about including that you had watched the video in your report.
That's correct.
And Dr. Lehman, as your supervisor, indicated that you didn't need to do that.
Yeah, he said don't do that.
Don't do that, okay. Can you show me anywhere else in your report where you talk about any of the materials that you reviewed? That were not available to you in the autopsy room? Did you review any other materials?
Well, I do say per available medical records for the urinary drug screen positive for hospital admission, so that's.
Were you informed of that, or did you review all the medical records front to back in this case?
I reviewed the available medical records that were made available to me.
Okay.
And I don't know, state laws are different. I don't know how much Ohio retains. I know in Indiana we do.
All right. And so, the very first sentence that you write is Roman numeral number 1, correct?
Yes.
And what you describe is a sudden collapse following excited state and physical altercation with law enforcement, correct?
Yes.
And so, whether you put in there that you watched the video or you didn't as part of your review, you did, correct? Watch the video?
I did watch the video before
you
composing
wa-
my report.
You watched the video multiple times, yes?
Well, I don't know how many times I watched the video before composing my report, but I've watched it since then.
Okay. And what you see on the video is an excited state and a physical altercation with law enforcement, correct?
Yes.
And so, whether you put in there that you watched the video or you didn't, you're clearly putting in your report the relevant interaction preceding Mr. Rios' death, which would be the excited state and the physical altercation with law enforcement, correct?
Sure.
No one instructed you not to put in there that there was a physical altercation with law enforcement, did they?
No.
Okay. Now, moving on to right beneath that, I guess what would be Roman numeral 1A, and then followed by B, the B1, 2, and 3, appeared to be things that were relevant that you learned while conducting the autopsy, and also reviewing, I guess, the medical records that were available to you that were relevant to your opinion as to the cause of death in this case back in 2019, correct?
Well, I just want to say that you keep saying your opinion, and even though my name is signed, it was not my opinion that excited delirium was the cause of death.
I know, I heard you say that, but...
Okay, well, I just, the truth, the whole
Objection,
truth,
Your
and
Honor.
nothing but the
Argument.
truth,
Okay.
and it's not
Hold on.
my opinion.
Okay.
So when I answer my question, I want to be clear that it's not my opinion.
Could you take a
The
look?
objection's overruled, by the way, go ahead.
Thank you. Can you take a look, we'll just get right down to there. Middle, bottom third of the page, in bold letters, it says opinion, correct?
Yes.
Can you read what it says directly below opinion?
It is my opinion that the cause of death of Alexander Rios is excited delirium. And the
Yeah.
whole truth is, I signed my name.
Ma'am, I asked you to read that, and then I'm gonna
Okay.
ask you a question. Okay.
Your Honor, I'm
You'll-
supposed to tell the whole
Well,
truth.
you'll have an opportunity
Okay.
to
Okay,
clear up.
okay,
Okay.
let's go on.
So what you write is, it is my opinion that the cause of death of Alexander Rios is excited delirium. That's what you wrote, correct? Yes or no?
That's what is written here.
And the first name that appears beneath the line, it is my opinion, is Amanda Paul, forensic pathologist, and that is your signature, correct?
And I was so conflicted about this, and that's something that has given me stress and anxiety for years, because I don't think that's what happened, and I feel like there is a lot, I don't agree with it, and I was very conflicted. Like I said, I was in a very precocious situation, and I felt that there was no choice. I wanted to get my time done, I wanted to spend my year there, get my training, and get out of there.
Okay, ma'am. Doctor, I want to get back to what you wrote and what's on this page, okay?
Yes.
And then I'm sure you'll have an opportunity to talk about that. Moving back up.
Yes,
Sudden collapse following excited state and physical altercation with law enforcement. That's what you wrote as the precipitating event, correct?
yes,
Okay? A, torn parenthesis, ruptured plastic bag-like object in the stomach.
Yes.
You wrote that, correct?
Yes.
And what you're talking about there is the ruptured plastic bag-like object that you found while conducting the autopsy of Mr. Rios in his stomach, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And that was significant enough to you that after you indicate the precipitating event, that is letter A that you wrote when you sat down and wrote your report, correct?
Yes.
Letter B is status post-medical intervention. He was hospitalized 7 days, right?
Yes.
And number 1, under post-medical intervention while at the hospital, is urinary drug screen positive for amphetamines following hospital admission per available medical records, correct?
Correct.
And so what you're doing is you are listing as letter A, first thing we see is the ruptured plastic bag, and under B1 at the hospital, the first item you list is the positive for amphetamines at the hospital, correct?
Yes.
The obvious connection there is the presumptive positive for amphetamines at the hospital and the bag that you find in his stomach, and making the connection that he was under the influence of drugs, correct?
That is certainly a possibility, but it's not a direct conclusion that I can draw. I learned since then, apparently he was prescribed amphetamine for ADHD.
Jack has to approach.
Okay.
Hold on.
Ladies and gentlemen, the parties have stipulated or an agreement that Mr. Rios did not have a prescription for amphetamine. And so information that Dr. Paul had as to that appears to be incorrect, and so disregard her statement as to she received that information because the state and defense agreed that he did not have a prescription for amphetamine when all this occurred.
I'm sorry, that was my mistake. I thought that that's what I had been told.
Well, I'm gonna ask you a question.
Yes.
Do you think you can stick to what you know for me?
I know I was told
It's a
that.
question.
I know I was told
Excuse me.
that. I'm sorry that that was incorrect.
Okay?
Your Honor,
Yes?
I'm going to object to the argumentative nature of this, and
And I'm sorry, my
there's no reason,
Okay.
there's no reason to approach this witness in this matter.
It is cross-examination, so
Yes, Your Honor.
I understand the nature of cross-examination. I think she answered it, so I think we can move on. We're trying to move along here.
For purposes of questions going forward, though, I am going to ask for directed, or that the witness be advised,
Yeah.
not to speculate on what she started. I'm not asking her questions about what she heard, I'm asking her about what she did.
Yeah, Dr. Paul, one thing is, this is true for every witness, you can only testify about what you have personal knowledge about. So it's something someone told you or you heard would be considered like a hearsay statement. So just go with what you personally know from your examination. And that may
Well then, I mean, I know that this man had a pretty normal body. Nothing was physically wrong with him. What else do we need to talk about? Let's go, please. I wanna get home to my kids.
I know you do. I do too. Okay.
I'm going through a divorce and this is my first Halloween with them. And I have to go to Central Indiana. It's almost 2 o'clock.
Okay.
Please.
Well, we're doing the best we can.
Then let's
I'm not
go.
asking for a break, I'm gonna keep going. Are you good?
Yeah, please go.
Did you get
Ask
super
the
charged
question.
up over the lunch hour?
No, please ask your next question.
All right, I'm going to. All right, so getting back to it, with the information that was available to you, when you wrote this report at your desk, you listed the ruptured plastic bag in conjunction with the presumptive positive amphetamine from the hospital, yes?
Yes,
And that was relevant to you as potential cause of death as it related to symptoms associated with excited delirium, correct?
I don't believe in excited delirium.
Except for, you take an oath, right? As a medical doctor, do you take an
I
oath?
will object, this has been asked and answered now twice.
Well, let me hear the question let me hear the question.
As a medical doctor, just like lawyers, you take an oath, correct?
Yes,
I don't think that was asked and answered, so.
And that oath requires you to make findings based on what you believe to be the case, right?
yes. I mean, well, no, I don't know. What is the oath? Because I don't think that's part of it. I think it's an oath is to do no harm. I don't know where it says to make a diagnosis. I don't think Hippocrates said that.
All right. Well, do you take your responsibility serious when you're putting your name on a line like that? Making
Yeah,
an opinion?
I've already discussed to the jury that I reached out to colleagues. I said, what do I do? And they said, I'm in this precarious, I don't know what to do. They said, just sign your name, and when the time comes, if it ever goes to court, just say you're not available. Because I knew it would come to, well, doctor, why did you sign your name if you didn't agree with it? I was concerned about that before I put my name on this line. I felt I had no choice. I did what I had to do. I don't agree with it. It's been asked and answered. Can we move on to the next point, please?
Anoxic encephalopathy,
Yes,
lack of oxygen to the brain, right?
correct,
That could be caused by a number of different things, correct?
correct.
One of them is the use of toxic drugs, right?
Being in a comatose state for a week is the more likely cause of his anoxic encephalopathy rather than the effect of the drugs.
Okay. But getting back to my question, because as we know, there are a number of potential different causes for these things, right? Already established that as it relates to some of the other things we've talked about. One potential cause of anoxic encephalopathy is, in fact, drug overdose or toxicity with respect to drugs, correct?
That is correct.
Now, you know that a positive, presumptive positive in a hospital is going to involve a threshold amount, right?
Yes,
And in this case, you know that the threshold associated with the presumptive positive from reviewing those records is greater than 1,000 nanograms per milliliter, right?
you're making assumptions about what I know or don't know. I would have to look at the paper. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Well, you were thorough when you reviewed the medical records when you're putting these things on paper, weren't you?
Yes, but I don't recall threshold levels for every medication.
Okay. Or illicit drug, right?
Right.
Okay. But you would agree that there are thresholds that you have to be above in order to have a presumptive positive in a hospital setting?
We're gonna talk about things I know, so this seems like questions for toxicologists and not forensic pathologists.
So you're just not familiar?
I'm familiar with it, but it's not my area of expertise. I'm here as a fact witness as to what I did. I reviewed the medical records and I documented that the urinary drug screen was positive. A screening test is just that, a screening test. It doesn't confirm anything.
Can you show us anything in your report
No,
as to your findings that would support any explanation of death other than excited delirium, your findings?
I'm not sure I understand the question. There are no findings for excited delirium because it's not a thing.
Okay, well, let's talk about that. It was in 2019, correct?
It's a relic of the past, and it's something that I don't really have, it's a pseudo-scientific relic of the past, in my opinion.
Do you belong to any professional organizations?
No, I do not.
Do you belong to the National Association of Medical Examiners, primary medical organization?
I just answered that I do not belong to any associations,
Are
and that
you
would
aware that
include
it
me.
wasn't until March 2023?
Objection, relevance, it's outside her scope, she said she's not a member.
Well, she's
It-
talking about it as a relevant past.
All right.
It is in March of 2023
Objection.
that they did.
Hold on,
Christina.
everybody. hold on.
Sorry.
No one. talk.
Sorry.
I think if she's not a member of that organization, I don't know if you have knowledge of it, so I think based on that, I would sustain.
Okay. Well, what do you know happened in March 2023 with respect to the use of excited delirium?
NAME finally stepped up and put a position paper out that said not to use excited delirium as a cause of death, as there's no corresponding ICD-10 code or WHO diagnosis because it's not a thing.
That's almost verbatim what it says, isn't it?
I don't know, why don't you read it out loud and see how close I am?
But it goes on to say, instead, name endorses that the underlying cause for the delirious state be determined, if possible, and used for cause of death or death
Your
certification.
Honor, excuse me, I apologize. Mr. Mayor is trying to get through the back door, what he couldn't bring through the front. He's talking about, now he's testifying about the contents of a report she's already stated she doesn't know anything about.
Well, I think she indicated.
He's reading from the report.
I get it.
It's not a report.
It's a
Well,
statement.
It's a statement. I think she asked me how close she was on reading that, and so I think.
Yeah,
in
I
response to
literally
her
repeated.
question-
This is cross-examination, it's not dialogue.
I get it. You can ask your next question. I overruled it.
Okay, so you have indicated correctly that in March of 2023, name indicates that excited delirium are not endorsed or recognized in renewed classifications. That's accurate, correct?
That's accurate.
But you also know that they go on to say that they endorse identifying the underlying cause of the delirium and just using that as the underlying causes of death,
If you
without
know.
saying excited delirium. Isn't that
Only
true?
if you know that.
Isn't that true?
If you know, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If you know.
I mean, I did, I read that, you know, during the lunch break, I looked it up and read it.
Me too.
Yeah,
I know, isn't it great? No, we've known about this for a while.
yeah, and
Okay?
I've known about that for a while too, today wasn't my first time.
And so it would be a bit inaccurate to say that excited delirium is no longer a thing when you consider that you can still list
Your Honor,
the circumstances that cause the delirious state and have those as the cause of death, correct?
Your Honor, I'm gonna object once again. Now he's asking her to make a conclusion.
Well, she can do it. her
She
professional
just
practice.
said she's not a member of the organization.
I get it.
She read it over the article. He's now asking
Let me-
her to make a conclusion that that's not accurate.
Well, can you answer the question without making a conclusion, or does it require you to make it?
Well,
Attorney Mayor, maybe could you rephrase your question without asking her to make a conclusion?
Yes, you are aware, right, that the group that you've talked about, the National Association of Medical Examiners, in March of 23, no longer endorse excited delirium as a cause of death, correct?
correct.
But you are also aware, based on having read the statement before we came in here, that NAME does endorse that the underlying cause for the delirious state be determined and used for death certification.
I
You're aware of
think
that,
I've
correct?
said yes like 8 times to that
All right.
question.
So, because we're not gonna use excited delirium here in 2023, right, it means we were allowed to use it back in 2019 as a,
Now he's asking for a legal conclusion.
No, it would be a medical conclusion.
it's her conclusion.
So ask it as.
It was Dr. Lehman's conclusion.
Okay.
Some doctors continued to use it, in my opinion, mistakenly.
Okay. So what you knew then and what you know now about excited delirium are that it presents with several different types of characterizations or symptoms, correct? You're aware of that, right?
I haven't read about excited delirium. I can't really talk about it right now. I just don't believe that it is a real phenomenon.
You know what delirium is, yes?
I do know what delirium is, but I don't necessarily hold to the belief of excited delirium
We
as the
understand.
cause of death.
Okay. But you know what delirium is, correct?
Yes.
And you know that people that present with delirium present with sudden onset of bizarre and or aggressive behavior, correct? Yes?
Potentially.
Agitation, yes?
Potentially.
Paranoia, yes?
I don't know about that one.
Violence potentially toward others?
Potentially.
Unexplained physical strength?
I don't know if that's related. That's what they talk about in excited delirium. I don't know. I'm talking about just straight up delirium.
Hyperthermia?
That can be a thing, yeah.
And it's usually precipitated or brought on by stimulant drug use, correct?
That is the definition of excited delirium.
Okay. And so if I understand the way that we're to deal with excited delirium now, if someone previously was determined to have been a cause of death excited delirium, say in 2021, In 2023, after March of 2023, NAME would simply say, list all of those criteria without saying excited delirium. Fair?
I don't know, like I said, like we've established, I'm not a member of NAME, so I don't know what they would say to exactly. We talked about that, but
And that is the leading organization in your field, correct?
it is, yes.
Okay. All right, so well, it's not easy,
Okay.
you know.
I'm stressed out too.
All right.
We're going as fast as I think.
I know.
I'll ask
it's-
for one more,
okay,
please.
okay, please.
With respect to amphetamines that he would have had on board at the time, without a confirmatory test, we simply can't get at levels. Is that fair as far as?
Urinary levels don't really mean anything because it's just indicative of past use. The more relevant levels would be blood, but in the hospital they generally don't use blood for toxicology. They just use a urinary drug screen. But in forensics, we test the blood because that's what's relevant to us.
Okay, but in the hospital setting, they collect the urine, they see what's in your urine so they can figure out what medications they can give you safely or not, right?
Well, I don't think that's exactly why they do it. They try and see what you've already taken. The urinary drug screen is to see what drugs are in your system.
As it
Not-
relates to what might be reasonable to medications to give you, right?
I
She's
doubt
not
that
psychic
kind of
stroke. She's not a
doctor.
medical doctor, she's not.
I am a medical doctor. I'm just not that
She's
kind of
an
doctor.
emergency room medical
Hold
doctor.
on,
My
not everybody,
apologies.
obviously the court reporter's trying to take this down, court reporter cannot take
She's-
down multiple people talking. I get your objection, I think you were asking her as a medical doctor.
Yes.
Not as, so I think it's okay, because she is a medical doctor, and so she can answer that question, so if you can.
The question was phrased, Your Honor, if I may, for the record, the question was phrased so that she was going to be asked to answer a question about what ER doctors would do effectively on initial admission to make a determination about what is in a person's system.
And only if she's able to offer that kind of, if she has that kind of knowledge, so again, if you have knowledge of that, then you can answer, if you don't know, then just say you don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. Well, it's also relevant, what's in your system, as to what may be going on with your body when you're in distress, right?
Yeah, that's why they want to know what's in your system.
Right. Concerns perhaps
Yeah,
for
so
drug
they know what
overdose,
they're
right?
dealing with. So they know what they're dealing with. It's not necessarily so they know what drugs that it would interact with. That was what my impression I was getting that you were asking me. It's so that they know what's going on with the body. It's not having
Right.
to relate to.
Because people do present to the ER in distress, right?
Yes.
And sometimes they can't speak, right? Can't self-report what's in their system, right?
Right.
And so having that urinary test lets you know what's in their system and at least in threshold amounts, right?
Well, we would never believe what somebody told us. We would still test the urine. They would still test the urine.
Because people can lie, right?
People lie,
Especially about drug use, right?
especially about drug use.
Okay, all right. I want to talk specifically about, just a couple more things, okay?
Okay.
Kind of round third, heading home, if you will.
Please.
All right. So, in the room where it happened, the autopsy, right? You talked about who was there, right? And you are communicating with your assistants and probably with Dr. Lehman as he's in and out of the room, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And isn't it true that during the time you were performing and conducting the autopsy, you spoke out loud, about excited delirium as a concern for Mr. Rios?
Did
I
you
have no
recall?
idea. I don't recall doing that during the time of the autopsy. I mean, this was over 3 years ago.
But you feel so strongly about it now, you would think you would remember, right?
No, I don't even remember what I had for breakfast. I have ADHD. I only remember certain parts of things. you know, things that stick out.
Certainly there were people in the room that were paying attention to what you were doing during the autopsy, correct?
Yes.
And those included some law enforcement types, right?
Yeah, I have, you know, 2 documented that were, or well, the coroner's office and the detective are who signed in.
Certainly not uncommon for them to be paying attention to what the doctor is saying about the autopsy in your experience, right?
Your Honor, this is pure speculation.
She knows.
Well, if that's customary in your practice.
I don't know, I mean, sometimes they just sit there and scroll on their phone too.
Can they ask you questions?
Yeah, they have the chance to ask us questions.
And that happens, right?
I mean, it sometimes happens, yeah.
And you'll answer to the best ability if it's not something where you can't because you're otherwise engaged, right?
I mean, I'm always honest.
Sure. All right. And what you're saying is you can't recall speaking out loud about excited delirium during the time you were conducting the Rios autopsy. You can't recall that.
No, I can't recall doing that during the time of the autopsy.
Not denying it.
It is possible, I just don't recall if it happened or not during the time of the autopsy. You know, it takes a course over an hour or 2.
Now, we know Dr. Lehman was in and out of the autopsy room in supervisory capacity, correct?
Yeah, I assume so. I don't know how often he was in or out, I don't recall any of that.
There was never an argument or a disagreement that took place between the 2 of you that anyone would have witnessed in the autopsy room over this excited delirium, correct?
No, like I said, I don't recall talking about excited delirium at the time of the autopsy exam. And we certainly did not, if we had fought over the use of the term excited delirium at the time of the exam, I am fairly certain that that would stand out to me. But as you said, we should just talk about what I know.
Okay. And so any discussion that occurred with respect to the cause of death occurred in these roundtable discussions that you talked about?
Yeah, afterwards.
Okay, and who would have been in those rooms?
The attendings, the other staff at the Montgomery, the other physicians at the Montgomery County Coroner's Office.
Okay.
And I
so-
also consulted with physicians at the Marion County Coroner's Office who all disagreed with the cause of death, excited delirium.
And so did you file anything with any organizations or with the board on Dr. Harshbarger or Dr. Lehman with respect to their determination, or ultimately Dr. Lehman's call?
No, I did not do that.
Okay. Were there arguments between you and Dr. Lehman?
It wasn't a heated argument. I did present an alternate diagnosis, and I felt it was very well supported, and he just said, no, just use excited delirium.
All right. And so there is nothing where the 2 of you were arguing or you were reprimanded or...
No,
Right.
no, we did not. I got along with Dr. Lehman very well, generally.
And so in the end, he essentially is the teacher and the supervisor and the chief deputy coroner, correct?
Yes.
And so you put together the report and then have the discussion with him, and then you either sign your name or you don't, right?
Correct.
And in this case, you signed your name indicating that your opinion on November 22nd, 2019 was excited delirium. Yes or no?
I signed the document saying that it was my opinion. I did do that. I wasn't under threat of perjury at that time, though. It was just, I was going along with my attending physician.
This was in November of 2019.
Okay,
You're here today
yes,
in 2023, right?
yes,
Not October 31st, 2023.
okay.
At any point in time, did this gentleman from BCI or any other investigators from BCI get in contact with you to discuss your opinion and ask you questions about whether you stood by that or not?
I was called by an attorney. I don't know
When?
if I specifically spoke to anybody from BCI. I know there was a conversation with 2 people.
Yeah, and that occurred like a couple of days ago, right?
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm asking you, in the 4 years prior to that, at any point in time, did a detective type get in touch with you and say, hey, we want to sit down and have an interview and discuss your findings with you? Did that ever happen?
I think that I might have gotten a subpoena at one point a couple years ago. And
I'm
then-
asking you if a detective ever got in touch with you
No, I don't recall that.
and you indicated you were conflicted about this, you were upset about this, and all of these different things. Was there ever a point in time instead of waiting for them to come find you, if you just picked up the phone and said, I'm gonna make some calls and see if someone will talk to me? Did that ever happen? Yes or no?
I thought about it, but I never did do that. I didn't know what to do.
And in the end, as you take a look at that video, as you have several times in the past before signing your name to that report, you look at the findings that you actually did make. Understanding that today you could not call it excited delirium, okay, at least that's the directive. Certainly there's evidence of delirium, yes? Based on your findings and also what you see on that video.
Potentially, I don't think he demonstrated superhuman strength. I think he was
Were you,
just
were you,
acting
were
crazy.
you, were you in the pile?
Objection.
Well, it's sustained.
No.
Certainly appears agitated, yes? Certainly appears
Oh, I
agitated.
don't know what that means.
Certainly appears
Okay.
agitated, right? Certainly appears physically aggressive, correct?
I don't know. He ran out the room and then was tackled, as far as I saw.
He burst out of his jail cell.
He ran out of the room.
Objection, Your Honor, the video speaks for itself.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think so, so I'll sustain.
One moment, please. That's all I have for you at this point. Thank you.
Okay.
Hang on, Prosecutor Thompson, any questions at all?
A moment. Paul, very, very quickly.
Yes.
Is there, Mr. Mayor went to great extent to ask you about the indicia of the dementia and all those other things that you observed. Is there anything in their medical records on your report about the body temperature from the medical records?
I did not document that. And that was the question you asked, if there's anything in my
So there's nothing in your record, there's nothing in your report.
to document hyperthermia, so there is no
Well,
evidence.
let's back up. Real quickly, what is hyperthermia?
So that would be an elevated body temperature.
All right. And as you understand, whatever excited delirium is, that was a hallmark of an issue that was noticed, recognized under
Yes.
hyperthermia,
Yes.
under excited delirium. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, the medical records, to your knowledge, would indicate what his body temperature was at the time of admission into the hospital. Is that correct as a standard protocol?
Yeah, it's a standard.
And you didn't mention it.
I did not mention it.
Well, real quickly, if it had been noted in the medical records, would you have mentioned that?
Most likely.
Oh, thank you. I have nothing further.
On that topic? No. Do any of the jurors have a question for Dr. Paul? Dr. Paul, I don't see any
Okay.
questions, so you're out of here.
All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Next witness?
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, the state will call Tony Mold.
Okay.
You solemnly swear affirm the testimony you're about to give this court today is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Please be seated.
Afternoon, Ms. Moe. Please state your name for the record.
Tony Lynn Mold.
What was your relationship to Alexander Rios?
I was Alex's mother.
Did he live with you?
Yes, he did.
How old was Alex when he died?
27, 26, 27.
May I approach the picture?
You may.
Showing you what has been marked as State's Exhibit 4 and State's Exhibit 5. You okay? Can you identify this?
This is my son Alex. Taken the summer before he passed away.
Okay, thank you. And what is Exhibit 5?
Exhibit 5 is my son Alex and his two sons, Marcus and Anthony.
And how old were the children?
11 and probably 4.
And this picture was taken about the same time as this
About
one?
the same
The
time.
summer before he passed?
Mhm.
Since that picture was taken, did Alex have another child?
He did. He had a daughter that was born 2 days before he died. So he never did get to meet her.
And what's her name?
Riley.
Your Honor, I'd like to publish these to the jury with your permission.
Any objection?
No objection.
Go ahead.
At various times, there have been descriptions of who Alex was. And unfortunately, because of the circumstances of his passing, that's going to be an issue here. So if you would, please tell us what kind of man Alex was.
Alex was kind. He was funny. He was a hard worker. Natural athlete. He loved sports.
What kind of sports?
Baseball, basketball, football.
Was he a active participant, or was
He
he more
wasn't.
of an
No, growing up.
active observer?
No, well, later it was observer, but growing up, he played sports all through high school and junior high school, and he loved sports. I remember going on vacations, and he would, March Madness. We'd always be watching basketball on TV or on the radio, and he knew everything about all the statistics, baseball.
Is that something that he shared with his children?
Yes, they played a lot of basketball together, shooting hoops in the driveway. They would play, baseball a little bit, but the youngest one was a little bit young to, catch the ball, but they would pass the football and things like that.
Now, it's fair to say Alex was not without his flaws.
Correct.
Did Alex have an addiction issue?
He did.
Are you able to talk about that? Did you experience it personally with him?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
How did he deal with it?
He struggled with it from, being in high school, right after high school, but he still had graduated. He continued playing football and all the sports, and it took a hold of him like right after high school.
Did he seek help about it?
He did. We went through Licata. The family got involved. We did an intervention. Many times we were at Glen Bay or some of the different, I can't think of the name of them, Rock Creek. But over the years, we went into some of those abuse or those clinics, and he came out and he was fine for a while. But as in between, he was working. He was doing what he needed to do until would get back into it.
Now, relative, and I know that this is difficult, because I have to make this point of reference, so I'm going to apologize in advance.
Okay.
But relative to the time of Alex's passing, where was he at in his drug treatment regimen? Was he clean? Was he not clean?
He
Where
was, we thought he was clean at the time, that summer, that this happened. I mean, it happened in the fall, but in the summer, he seemed fine. For the first time in his life, he opened a bank account. He joined the Eagles in Wakeman. He just seemed like he was a real citizen for the first time, you know. He was doing things with the kids and with us and spending time with us. So, and he was spending time with the rest of his family, going to family functions, which it was sporadic, you know, as he was growing up. So.
Now, let's talk about that period of time immediately prior to his arrest and incarceration in September of 2019. Where was Alex in his drug treatment continuum at that time?
We think he was using, but he wasn't using, when he was when his drug addiction was the worst, he was a heroin addict. But for 2 or 3 years, he wasn't using heroin. It was probably meth or something. But we don't even know that for sure. It was one of his girlfriends was using it, and that's when I thought that he was actually having psychological problems because of some of the things that were going on. But then he seemed okay, so we thought he was fine and he wasn't doing anything. And that's how it was left before he, right when that happened. We didn't think he was even using again, but we weren't sure.
Now, you were present the night that Alex was apprehended.
Yes.
By the Wakeman police, I believe it was?
Yes, it was.
Can you describe that event, that evening, and his actions?
Yes. We were all sleeping, and I hear knocking at the door, and thankfully, nobody else woke up. My husband didn't wake up, our grandson didn't wake up, and I go to the door, and it must have been just the police chief or the police, I don't even really remember, and they said they were looking for Alex, and I don't know if they even explained what was going on, but there was a warrant and they were looking for him. And they actually had to come in and search my house.
Did you get permission to do that?
Well, no, they didn't. I don't think they asked for permission. They came in because they were looking for him and they were going to arrest him. And so they looked through every bedroom. They even came into my bedroom and woke my husband up and looked into our bedroom. I'm like, he's not here. So then they continued, looking in the garage and in the basement, and they did find him in the basement. I didn't know he was there. I didn't know what was going on. Like I said, we were sleeping.
Did you ever tell him that? Yeah, strike that. That's okay. That's all right. I need you to now talk to us about the time when Alex was in the hospital after this incident. Can you do that?
I can.
I'd like you to tell me, did you have questions about this event? Well, strike that. Thank you. How did you first find out that Alex had been involved in an incident in the Richland County Jail?
I missed a phone call. We were getting Anthony, our grandson, ready for school. And so, when it's chaotic, sometimes you're not paying attention to your phone, and I saw I missed a call. And I told my husband, and I can't remember which one of us called back to find out that that something happened in the jail and that Alex was in the hospital, Ohio. I can't remember the name of the jail, or the hospital in Mansfield, and that I should probably go up there. And he would not give me any information on what happened.
Okay.
Or anything. So as I'm driving there, because my husband had to take our grandson to school, and I'm talking to my other son and family on the drive there, letting them know I didn't know what was going on, but, you know, just,
Okay, when you got to the hospital, you introduced yourself.
I did.
Did they tell you where Alex was?
Yes, they took me up to his room where,
Could you describe, if you would please, the condition that Alex was in at the point in time when you entered his room?
I'm sure, he was just hooked up to a ventilator, eyes closed, just uncontrollably shaking, just tremors throughout his whole body.
Is it fair to assume that you had questions of the doctors?
Yes.
Did they answer those questions?
Yes and no. I mean, I don't think they answered, I don't think they knew everything that happened to Alex. I
Did they give you a prognosis or?
did they give me a prognosis? No, they didn't know for days. I had to, and I didn't understand what they were saying and what they were talking about. I had to call my niece, who is a nurse at the stroke unit in Massillon area, and she came and she helped me get through understanding some of what the doctors and what they were saying, because we thought that maybe he would be okay. We didn't know, and I guess they were trying to tell us the part of his brain that thinks or can ever do anything was gone. The only part of his brain left was the involuntary, and that he probably would never really wake up.
So, did there come a point in time when you had to make a decision about the continuation of
Yes.
medical treatment for Alex as his mother?
Yes.
Did you make that decision?
We did. There was a gentleman that came in that talked about hospice. We're like, hospice? It just didn't seem real. We couldn't believe that. And then, you know, talking to, you know, my niece and the doctors and the nurses, we understood that he probably was never going to be okay. And if they took him off a ventilator, he may be okay, he may not be. So we did end up having to make that decision to take him off the ventilator because they couldn't keep him like that forever. And it was hard because it was my other son's birthday that week, and we didn't want we didn't want him to die on that day. So it just, and it was just, yeah, we came to the conclusion that we would have to do that on that Friday.
When
And
you
I felt
say-
like they wanted I felt like they thought we were dragging it out, but we really weren't. We weren't ready.
Okay, when you say we, who are you referring to?
My husband, Alex's dad, Alex's stepmom, his
So you were all
brother, his
there?
sister, we were all there. And I made sure when we decided to do it, all the family would be there.
All right.
Because, I mean, we all loved him, no
And so
matter
the
what.
So the decision was made. He was disconnected from life support. Were you present when that happened?
I was. It was the hardest thing.
How long did Alex survive after he was removed?
Not long, 15, 20 minutes. No, this is the best of my recollection. I don't
Fine.
remember.
No one was sitting with a stopwatch, I'm sure.
No, it was worse than I expected it to be. I knew it wasn't gonna be good, but I thought he would just pass away. But he would open his eyes and like gasp, and it's like, we all just started bawling. It's like,
But he did, in fact, die.
yeah.
Did you have questions about the incident that occurred that led to his death?
Yes.
Did you ask those questions of the county jail, the Richland County Jail,
Yeah.
members and representatives
I
of that
did not
organization?
personally. My husband tried to get information. We got the hospital records. We saw in the paper that it was suicide, and we're like, so we didn't really know what happened. We did a lot of work to find out what happened to him. Nobody would tell us.
Did anyone at the jail ever sit down with you and lay out for you the series of events that occurred leading to Alex's hospitalization and eventual death?
No.
Did anyone tell you that it had been videoed?
I don't think so.
How much time elapsed after Alex's death until you or your husband discovered that a video existed of the incident?
I don't remember how long it was.
What was it,
until we
days,
found out.
weeks, months? Do you recall?
Maybe weeks, maybe months. I don't exactly remember, I'm sorry.
That's fine. Have you seen that video?
I've seen parts of the video.
You understand that that video is being displayed here in this courtroom?
I think
Today.
I heard that.
How do you feel? How does your family feel now? How does your family feel now that Alex is gone?
We miss him. We're sad. We think about him. We get together, and every time we get together, we talk about him. And my grandson, a lot of times will say, "Grandma, I just wish God would bring him back." And he really thinks that that could happen. And his older son struggles with it.
Now, how old was his oldest son at the time when he passed?
Oh goodness, 11. Marcus is now 15.
So he knew his dad,
Yeah,
and they did things together, right?
yeah. To the racetrack. They just, yeah, they did a lot together. But
A moment. I have no other questions of you, Mrs. Moe. Thank you very much.
Cross-examination?
Thank you, Judge.
Your Honor, can we sidebar?
Yeah, you can come up. You may proceed, Attorney Mayor.
Thank you. Like I said, good afternoon, ma'am. My name is James Mayer. I represent gentleman seated to my right, Cooper. I'm gonna try and ask you a few questions here, and I'll do the best I can to keep the questions focused. Okay? All right. So, Mr. Thompson finished his questioning, asking you about did any jail officials reach out to you, discussion about video, things of that nature, and you said it could have been weeks, maybe months, that kind of thing.
no one ever reached out to us
Okay. From the jail or
Correct.
sheriff's department?
either.
Okay. I'm guessing at some point you did have contact with BCI and the prosecutor?
I reached out at one time to the prosecutor. I can't remember when it was.
So,
It's been 4 years.
right, and so you didn't hear from the prosecutors immediately after this either,
No,
or even within months or after that?
Objection.
I don't
always.
remember. I don't.
Well, I think there were questions raised, so I'll overrule.
The point is there was a lengthy passage of time before anyone that would constitute prosecutors, investigative agents from BCI, sheriffs, any authorities reached out to you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And it kind of sounds like that left you feeling as if you were in the dark.
Yes.
All right. You have eventually met Special Agent Lenhart, who's the lead investigator on the case, or is this the first time you've met him?
I've met him before.
And how long ago was that?
ago.
Okay, all right. And so, I do want to talk about the history a little bit here, okay? Really just a couple points I want to make with you. Of course, you told the jury all about your son. You heard about that in the opening statement. He's an athlete, had kids, all of those things. He was 28 years old, is that right?
27.
Of course, you mentioned in response to questions from Mr. Thompson that he also had, it sounds like, what would amount to a lengthy struggle with drug addiction.
Correct.
And best of your recollection, that started around the time he was age 16,
In that time frame, 16, 17.
and that persisted up until his passing.
Oh, on and off.
Sure. And by on and off, it means there were periods of time where he was in recovery and doing well, right? But if I'm understanding your testimony, those usually would be bracketed by relapses and that kind of thing. Yes? So, when we talk about when the police arrived at your residence, that was the Richland Police Department, correct?
Correct.
And that was September 18th, just after 11 p.m. or so, give or take?
Correct.
And you're indicating you were at home with your husband?
Yes, we were sleeping.
And you were sleeping. Was Alex living with you at the time?
Yes, he was.
Okay. And it's fair to say that during his adult years, he just kind of bounced around, right?
What do you mean?
As far as where he stayed?
No, well, he lived with us most of the time, so I wouldn't say he bounced around.
Okay. So most of the time he lived with you?
Yes.
Okay. And so he was certainly living with you on September the 18th?
Correct.
Okay. And what you recall about that night is you were awakened by the police showing up at your
Right.
house.
Mhm.
That's probably a pretty scary thing if you don't know
It
why
was.
that is, right?
It was, yes.
Okay. But not long after they arrived, they made you aware of why it was they had
Mhm.
come, right?
Correct.
And there had been like a disturbance at the girlfriend's place,
Yes.
right?
Correct.
Okay. So they were investigating like a domestic incident, right?
Right.
Okay. And this is the girlfriend that he relapsed with, right?
No,
No.
excuse me, no,
No.
I project this to relevance. She's not a witness, she's not on our witness list, she's not on his witness list.
Hang on. It would be only what you know as far as your knowledge, so
Okay.
I would sustain it as to only her knowledge.
Different girlfriend.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
This girlfriend didn't do drugs.
This one. Okay. All right. And so she had originally called the police, and then they also showed up at your house in connection with an unrelated warrant out of Richland County.
That it must have showed up, correct.
So it was,
Which-
really,
Yes.
it was like a dual purpose. They were at your place.
Your Honor, objection. Now he's telling her, he's asking her about what police are doing.
Hang on. I don't think,
Well, they made her aware.
I think it's based on her knowledge, so
Yeah.
I'll overrule if she knows, if they gave her that information.
And they did, correct?
Correct.
Yes. And what you understood is for both those reasons, they were looking for Alex.
Yes.
Okay. And you didn't deny them entry or anything like that?
No, but yeah, they didn't ask. They were coming in to look for him.
All right. And that continued for approximately how long before they located him?
Maybe a half an hour.
Half an
20
hour.
minutes.
Okay. And how would you describe the places that they searched? Where did they look? You kind of talked about
Everywhere.
that.
They came into our bedroom in the night, looked throughout the house, looked in the basement, in the garage.
Okay.
I think they looked up through the property, looking around for him.
Okay. At no point in time did he come out and surrender or anything?
I don't know. I wasn't in the basement when he came, when they,
All right.
I don't know.
Right. In other words, they went down to the basement and that's where they found
And
him.
they found it, yes.
All right. And what you do know is he was ultimately placed in handcuffs, restraints, correct?
Correct,
And he was let out of your basement and into police custody in the back of the
correct.
cruiser.
Yes, they let me talk to him before he left.
And
He
that
seemed
stands to reason that he was doing fine and
Yeah.
he was otherwise compliant with the police,
Correct.
with the exception of not coming out until they found him.
Right, but he seemed fine.
Fair enough. All right. And so, tragically, that's the last time you saw him until he was in the hospital.
Right.
Did he call you from the jail or anything like
No.
that?
No, I don't think he had been in long enough, because he told me, Mom, I'll call you tomorrow.
Okay.
Never.
All right. Now, you talked about when you had these really, really difficult meetings with doctors and medical staff at the hospital about how to continue care, decisions like that, right? Okay. And you spoke openly with medical staff about Alex and his struggles.
Probably, I don't remember, but I probably did. I'm very open.
Right. In fact, you told them things like what you told the jury, that he had struggled intermittently with drug abuse, yes?
Probably.
Okay. You indicated that he had been clean and sober throughout the summer. That's true, right?
True.
And then you also told them that somewhere about 3 to 4 weeks prior, he started doing methamphetamines again. Yes?
Probably. If they said I said it, then I probably did.
Yeah, and you want to tell them that so they can understand what's going on with him, because you became aware that he had positive for amphetamines in his system at the hospital, right?
I don't know
Rejection.
that.
Only if you,
I don't know that.
You
First
did
of all,
not-
Your Honor, it wasn't amphetamines.
okay, hold on.
Or, excuse me.
It was, I think it was.
Strike that. It was.
I thought it was
meth.
She, only your knowledge, so if you don't recall, you don't recall, so I would.
You
I
did
would
not
just
know
think-
that.
I don't think I knew that at the time.
That's fair, okay. But you wanted to make sure they knew whatever they needed to know about him, and you discussed his drug use.
Probably.
Okay. You also told them at the hospital that you weren't sure whether he took methamphetamine before he was arrested or if he somehow got some at the jail.
Yeah, I wouldn't know how he would get it at the jail. He wasn't there very long.
Right.
That surprised me that he could. But he didn't seem to be on anything when they picked him up, so
Okay.
I don't know.
You also told them, in addition to struggles with methamphetamines, that he also previously had struggles with heroin.
Correct.
Did I read in the medical reports that you were aware that he also had an overdose at some point in time on heroin?
Yes.
An overdose, as you understand it, is a very serious situation that can
Correct.
cause death, right?
Correct.
But stands to reason they were able to save him in that circumstance.
Correct.
Was he hospitalized?
Yes.
And you know what I'm talking about, in the previous
Yes.
overdose?
Yes.
Okay. Now, you talked about how there would be pockets of time when he was doing better and things of that nature, and you described some of that to the jury with respect to how he sees his kids and working and things like that, right? But it would be fair to say that probably as the drugs came and went, probably marked when those pockets of good times and bad times were, right?
Correct.
Because even as recently as May of 2015 or 2019, just 4 months before this, you had contacted the Wakeman police regarding him harassing you, Alex, right?
Right, right. And sometimes I had to do what I had to do to keep him in line.
Right. And sometimes it became too much and you involved the Wakeman police,
Right. To talk to him, that's all they would do, if they did.
try and get him calmed down.
Or to listen.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was easier that way.
So it was not uncommon for you to call the police on him when you needed to if you were having struggles with him.
A few times I did, yes.
When I was listening to your testimony and also reviewing the medical records, in addition to the struggles with drugs, you've also told the jury and also the medical staff, I think, about some mental health issues that you identified as.
I thought they were mental health issues, but I think he struggled with mental health and he was misdiagnosed growing up. And I think that's typical these days.
Don't disagree with you.
No.
I think that you talked specifically with the medical staff about issues with anxiety,
Yes.
depression.
Yes.
What else concerns did you have?
Just anxiety is the main thing that I remember.
Right. And you would agree that when you're dealing with issues like anxiety, depression, those can be intensified or exacerbated when you're using drugs like methamphetamine, right?
They
Your
could
Honor
be.
is calling for a medical
Yeah,
conclusion.
only if
In
you,
your
based on
experience.
her experience.
I said it could be. I don't know.
Okay. You've been around Alex at
His whole
points in
life.
time
Correct.
when you suspected he was under the influence of illegal drugs, whether meth or heroin, right?
Yes.
Okay. Moral stuff.
Sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. It's all right. Let me know if you need a minute. Okay. Your experience with him when he was under the influence of drugs like methamphetamine exhibit behaviors that were concerning to you?
I guess maybe just being paranoid or afraid.
Paranoid?
Yeah.
Right. You talk about periods of time when he was doing well,
Mm-hmm.
and those are marked by periods of sobriety, correct?
Correct.
And so it stands to reason that you wanted him to be clean and sober, correct? So of course the opposite stands to reason as well. When he wasn't clean and he was using, that was reflected in his behavior, his decision making, and that kind of thing. His quality of life, yes,
Yes.
and that of those around him, right?
Correct.
Ms. Mold, I appreciate you coming in today. Sorry for your loss, and I know it's difficult to answer these questions, and I appreciate you for doing that. That's all I have for you.
Thank you.
Prosecutor Tom?
Thank you, Roger.
Sure.
Ms. Mold, when the Wakeman policemen arrived at your home in the early morning hours or late night hours, did they announce themselves?
Yes.
Like, they announced themselves at the door?
Yes.
At any point after that, when they searched your home and your property, did they announce themselves to the house at large? Did they ever announce themselves again that you heard?
No.
So it's fair to say that if somebody was sleeping in another room and they didn't hear the front door,
They didn't.
they wouldn't have known who was in the house.
No, my husband didn't know.
Well, specifically.
Oh, Alex might
Alex.
not have known either. Right.
Where did he normally sleep?
He had a bedroom on the first floor.
How was he dressed at that time? Were you, strike that, I apologize. Ms. Moe, were you present when he was taken into custody
Yes.
and led out of your home?
I think so.
He was in handcuffs.
Yes. Yes.
Did he fight with the officers?
No.
Was he screaming unintelligibly?
No.
Was he communicating in any way at all?
He was just being quiet and he
How
was
was he
listening
dressed?
to what they were saying. He had probably sweatpants and a t-shirt and tennis shoes on. And I said, he said, Mom, I'll call you tomorrow. And I thought he'd be safe.
As a part of the inventory in the jail, when he was taken into custody, I believe there was a pair of white boxer shorts. Was that what he would normally wear?
Probably, yes.
Now, as I realize it's been a long time, but as we are here today, if you can recall, was that what he was wearing in the night when he was incarcerated, when he was arrested?
I don't remember, but probably.
I have nothing further.
Thank you. Attorney Mayor?
Just a couple follow-ups back. So, when he was let out in cuffs, and he was just kind of having a conversation with you, telling you to call it,
Yeah.
it's just kind of what you would normally, if it had been you, which it wouldn't be, but if it were you getting, it's how you would behave, right? You would be compliant with the police, right?
Right.
Okay, and that's what he was doing.
Right.
You were asked about some white boxers.
Yeah, I
Did
don't.
he have sweatpants on?
I believe so.
Or his underwear over top of them?
No.
So you don't know what kind of underwear he had on, do you?
I could guess. Right.
We all could guess.
Yeah.
Okay, a couple more. Prosecutor asked you, Alex could have been sleeping if he didn't know the police were there. Do you remember that line of questioning?
Right. He could have been. I don't know.
But he also asked you where's his bedroom, and you said it was
Down
on
on
the
the first floor, and they came in at the front door. Right.
Sure. And where he was found was the basement.
Right.
The police tell you he was found in a crawl space in the basement?
Yes, in the
Okay.
basement.
He didn't have a bed in the crawl space in the basement, did he?
No.
That sounds like hide and go seek, right?
Right. But if he saw them, he might have ran to the basement. Maybe. I mean, I don't know.
Right. Yeah. And then just kind of hid there.
Could be.
Right. That's all I have now. Thank you.
Do any of the jurors have a question for Ms. Mould? I don't see any, so ma'am, thank you. You can step down, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the jury, I said we'd end early. There's very little chance, I think, we could get another witness on and completed before 3 o'clock, 2:45, 3 o'clock was when I was thinking we were going to stop today. So I think this makes a good breaking point. You're going to have a little longer break than typical because you're not back until Thursday at 9 o'clock. So a little longer. So remember those instructions, they're very important about not discussing the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else and not letting anyone discuss it with you or in your presence. Remember, we're only 2 witnesses in. We don't want you to form or express any opinions until the case is finally submitted to you for your deliberation. So just keep that open mind, no opinions formed or made until the very end. And don't express any type of opinion on any kind of social media or anything else. As we talked about, there's media interest in this case. We want you to ignore all media coverage regarding the case. And the last one, we talked about this every time, is you're not doing your own research, you're not doing your own investigation. You'll make your decision in this case based on the evidence that is presented in this case from the witness stand and the exhibits, and not from any other sources other than that. So that for that reason, no research, no investigation on your own accord. We'll see you back here at 9 o'clock on Thursday, and we'll find out who the next witness is. Thank you.